Without further ado, I want to introduce the next session, next speaker, which has the best title of this session that I've seen. Yeah, you're welcome. And we're both from the other side of the pond, right?
We are.
We've come a long way to get here. So it's Torben Groser. Thank you.
That's correct.
And the title is Organizing the Suck.
Organizing the Suck.
Welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Torben. I'm the VP of Product Marketing at EventMobi. At EventMobi, we do awesome event technology, event apps, registration, all that jazz. We have a booth over there. So if you want to learn more about EventMobi, you can see us over there, because that's not what I'm going to focus on today. We're going to talk about something different, something that hopefully everybody, no matter whether you use EventMobi or use any other kind of software platform, can use. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. So also hello to everybody who's watching remotely. Very happy you're tuning in. Just briefly, before we dive into this session, I just wanted to make sure that you guys know that I am aware that the US is a complicated place. I love speaking in the US because there's so much history and culture. And there were people before us in this spot before, the Spanish and the English and everybody came. I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that, and that we, even if we're only visiting, try to the best of our abilities to make sure that we can live in peace with everybody. Just briefly before we start. So, organizing the suck. What is the suck? Why are we talking about the suck? Well, when we created this presentation, when we started thinking about this a couple of months ago, we found ourselves at a time where we were organizing a lot of online events, and we were just getting so many questions. I asked my colleague Valerie, who helped me doing this presentation, if she could include screenshots of attendees asking really annoying questions at an event. And as you may see, she took emails from me. So apparently I'm really annoying. So the suck is about the things we don't love about organizing events. Who in here loves organizing events? I hope most of you do, because if not, this is kind of not the right place for you. Anyway, there are things that are just annoying. Mostly attendees asking the same questions over and over and over and over and over again. And so this is really what we call the suck. And I want to show you a few practical ways of how you can change the way you run events so you have to deal less with those inquiries while, and this is the trick, while making your attendees feel like they're actually being taken care of better. So I want to show you how to take care less of your attendees and make them feel that you're taking care of them more. Magic. So the reason why this matters, and I'm already touched on that very briefly, is that if your attendees are well-informed and they're confident, that means they're happy attendees, and happy attendees are more likely to be return attendees. That's not rocket science. I mean, if you're, for example, looking at association event organizers, it is much, much more cost-effective to keep a member or to keep an attendee than to generate a new one. And even for corporates, it's the same. Attendees, just like any other type of customer that you may or may not have, are usually much, much cheaper to keep than to generate new ones every time you're doing something. And so really, in the end of the day, the reason why we want to organize the suck and the reason why we want to make sure that your attendees feel taken care of is people coming back, you guys being more effective, more profitable with the events, hopefully reaching your goals easier. So the biggest challenge when you're trying to organize the suck is to anticipate the needs of your attendees correctly. And so I'm going to spend a little time talking about how you can better anticipate the needs of your attendees. and how you can better figure out what it is they actually want and what they need, and then how you can react to that in a way that it makes your life easier and hopefully makes running your events easier. This chart is way too small to see from the distance, but what I want you to take away from that is it's called the digest experience. So this is looking at the customer journey of somebody attending a music festival, and going to an event, any kind of event, be it a music festival, be it a trade show, always follows more or less the same cycle. So it starts with desire. There's something that I want to do, that I want to know. Search. So you're starting to look at, where can I learn this thing? Where can I find this thing? Potentially forming a group. Who else is going there? Buying a ticket. Planning your attendance. Traveling to an event. Arriving at an event. Experiencing the event. So the part that we're doing right now at this very moment. Exiting the event and traveling home. Those are pretty common stages. And again, it's a chart from a research paper. It looks really smart, but it's not rocket science. We live through different stages as we attend and experience an event. And that's what I want you to remember and take away from this chart. So what can I do at these stages to make information available to attendees? Well, there's a bunch of things. Let's look at what may or may not be the first step of any of your attendees when it comes to experiencing your event. The registration, or as we describe it here, the process from researching to registering for an event. So what information do your attendees need during that phase? What are they looking at? What can you anticipate? And how do you best communicate during that phase? Well, typical questions before any attendee goes to your event is, what was last year's event like? Where can I find more information on what's going to happen this year at the event? Where can I find more information on the attendees of this event? Will this meet my educational goals? Will this meet my networking goals? How will this event play with my goals? How much are tickets? So is there a promo code? Again, this is not rocket science. These are questions that probably any of you can anticipate. We just put them here so that we have a common base for discussion. So what do you do with all these questions? How do you put them in a way that your attendees don't ask you these questions, but they can help themselves? Well, the first thing that I think event websites need to become much, much better at is over-communicating a lot of that information. So building out a really comprehensive event website that has this information around all the potential questions accessible in an FAQ section is really the first and most basic step you can take. You can either do that using just whatever you have for a website, but one thing that I want to mention, and that may be relevant to you guys, is there's also a lot of tools out there like Zendesk or Desk.com or other tools that help you build these FAQ pages. And the reason why you would want to maybe use a tool such as Zendesk in this example is because they also become really smart at learning around your events. So essentially, these tools help you to create a really powerful search functionality, making it easier for your attendees during the registration stage to understand what's going on. But really building an FAQ and having a comprehensive FAQ that looks at all the possible questions an attendee could ask around your event is the first step. Now, I know what you may be thinking. You guys have all of this on your website, yet your attendees keep asking the same questions that you have already answered, and clearly they're not reading the instructions. And guys, I hear you. I know this happens, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but let's move on for now for the pre-event preparation. So pre-event preparation is the stage when all the information gets collected by your attendees to make sure that they feel ready and prepared and good to go to your event. And again, during that phase, some of the questions that may come up are similar to the questions that we saw during the registration phase, but they may also be slightly different. So initially, I just wanted maybe to know who are the keynote speakers. Now I want to know who are all the speakers. Are there any flight and hotel deals? Is the venue accessible? What should I bring with me? Is there a dress code? I'm clearly overdressed today, but I love my suit. Are there gender-neutral bathrooms? If you sit here and you think this question is really odd, you're entitled to find this question odd, but this is what the next generation of event goers and event attendees cares about. So make sure that information is available somewhere. Is there Wi-Fi at the venue? Which still is a question, even though we have 2023. Who are the other attendees and how do I get in contact with them? These are just a bunch of questions. Again, there's many more, and we're going to talk about how to find out about these questions towards the end of this. And if you want to communicate these the pre-event information, one thing that you may want to do is you may want to switch gears. And you may want to use a different channel to communicate that information. So when we talked about the registration information, I mentioned that the easiest thing to do and probably the most effective thing to do is to put a searchable knowledge database on your website. But now, after somebody has registered, you can become much, much more helpful and proactive for your attendees by making information available through something that is called a contextual drip campaign. Does anybody know what a drip campaign is? I see some people raising their hand. For those of you that don't know, sounds really fancy, but again, it's a pretty well-known concept. It's essentially a series of emails that get sent to somebody based on some factor that you define. And so if you're thinking about and by the way, you don't need any fancy software to do this. Tools like MailChimp, HubSpot, Constant Contact, Active Campaign, and so on, they all have this built in. And so what you probably want to do now that your attendee has registered for the event is you want to build out something that is contextual. And what I mean by contextual is try to put yourself in the shoes of your attendees and try to emphasize with what are they thinking about at what stage. So the first thing that they may think about right after they booked the ticket to the event is, how am I going to get there? Where I'm going to sleep? So maybe on the first day after they booked the ticket, you can send them a reminder email. Here are the hotel details. Here are the flight details. This is how you get there. And then a week before the event, send them an automated know before you go email. And maybe the day before the event, you send them an email with what's happening in the city, what's happening pre-event, post-event, to make sure that they have the information. So the goal here really is to anticipate again what information do they need at what stage and give it to them before they have the opportunity to ask for it. Again, this is about organizing the suck. This is about avoiding your attendees asking you questions that they could just answer themselves. So if you're using a drip campaign and you time it smartly, that should help you a great deal reducing the stress. The other thing that you can do, if you have an event app, you can also use that, including push notifications, group chats, and so on, to make sure your attendees can help themselves, can ask other people, can join a community. I saw this with PCMA convening leaders. They're creating a Facebook group for attendees, and attendees still ask all the questions that attendees always ask, even though they could just read on the website. But the special thing here is that other attendees feel the urge to reply to these questions instead of the organizers. So the organizers have effectively outsourced their job to other attendees, which I think is incredibly smart. Now, the other thing that I want to mention at this stage is, in the first stage, we talked about the event website. Now we talked about emails. And what I want you to think about is the channels that you use to communicate to your attendees, because they also differ in function of how close you are to your event. So something like an event app may not be as useful as an email until maybe a week before the event, until everybody downloads it. Emails usually work, but they will probably stop working during the event because people tend to read emails less when they are at an event. So really think about what channel do you use at what time to communicate with your attendees, and they differ. One other thing I want you to think about is if you have an inquiry email address, usually that's just a mailbox that's shared with one or few people. But again, using a piece of software that's designed for customer support can help you a great deal. So there's tools like Zendesk or Sprinkler or whatever they're called. And what they do is essentially they take the emails and you reply to the emails from there. You can also easily assign these emails to other people on your team. So already they make it much more efficient. But the other thing they do, which is also really cool, is they learn from your answers. So we use a tool called HubSpot, and it can, for example, pre-write emails for us. So if we get a question from a customer, it comes up with a response, and we review that response. If it's good, we send it off. If it's not good, we fix it. And then it becomes smarter doing that. And so you can deliver you can use these same tools to deliver customer service to your attendees. I think that's incredibly powerful. Also, a lot of these tools offer chatbots that you could embed on your website. So somebody just writes a question, chatbot searches all the emails that have ever been written, gives you the right answer, and hopefully deflects the question from your attendee right then and there. And this goes on, obviously, with event travel. So how do I get to my hotel? What taxis can I take? How do I get from the airport to the venue? What time is the dinner? And so on. And so at that stage, it becomes more useful to leverage your event app. And a lot of event apps have a feature that's called custom fields. So you have profiles that have like all the fields with who is this person, where do they work, where they're from, and so on. But with a lot of providers, you can also create custom fields that are only visible to the attendees in charge. And so if you're planning travel for your attendees, you can put their travel information, their hotel information, their transfer information into the event app right then and there. And again, this does two things. Firstly, it helps you probably get fewer requests about when is my transfer back from the hotel to the airport, but it also makes the event feel really bespoke to your attendees because suddenly they don't have an event app, but they have their event app that really caters to their needs and their needs only. And that helps you save work, makes the event feel really, really special to them. During the event, again, questions, how do I check in on the first day? Where's the session? What time does the session start? And where washrooms? I got lost trying to find the washrooms here. And so if you have that event information, this is really where event apps start playing their strengths through things like personalized schedules, interactive mapping. And so by making that information available easily, you make it much, much easier for your attendees to find their way around. And then one thing that probably many of us can relate to, even though we know we shouldn't, sometimes we forget to do a proper post-event follow-up because the event is over, everybody is knackered. I've been an event planner for 20 years. I can relate to that. But it's also, again, a really powerful moment to communicate with attendees on topics such as, how do I keep in touch? Where's my return flight? Where can I book my ticket for next year? Is there a discount code at this event for people that book on the spot? This is one of the best marketing techniques I've seen in events. How can I provide feedback and so on? And so post-event, your event app is still really useful, but that's also where things like email as a channel become more useful again. And depending on what kind of event you run, this is also the moment where you can hand your attendees over to some sort of community. So there's community platforms. We do that at EventMobi. There's other companies over here that run online communities. You could also try to build a community on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever your audiences are. But this is really the moment in time where you still have their attention and you can feed them back into these communities. And that's the right moment to do it. Talking about post-event, when we did the research for this, we found a study that said that 52% of English-speaking respondents stated that engagement at events is the indicator of how successful an event is. So being able to engage with your attendees throughout all the stages from beginning to end is really what can help you make a more powerful event experience. And again, by communicating proactively, it can actually help you to have less work rather than more work. The other thing that I want to briefly talk about as we're coming to an end is that understanding engagement requires a high degree of empathy and getting into the attendee's perspective. And that's something that is not always easy. It's not always easy for thousands of attendees to understand their objectives, cares, their attention span, and doubts. And it is extremely powerful if we can do that. And if we start this thought experiment and we imagine ourselves as a guest to our event. When I researched this presentation with my colleague Valerie, I put myself into I tried to imagine myself being a guest for some of the events that I have organized. And quite frankly, some of the events that I have organized, I would not attend. And if you realize that, that's a very strong sign that you need to change something about your event. Has to do a little bit with honesty, but just putting yourself into the shoes of your attendees and anticipating their need or their needs is a super skill. So what can you do to make all of this a bit easier? Well, first things first, I think over-communicating and building out a really comprehensive, frequently asked questions section is useful. Not only helps it to reduce the amount of work, it helps you onboard staff that comes in closer to the event. And also it can be reused year over year. Even though your event may travel, a lot of things in this FAQ may actually not change. So you don't need to redo all of it. Secondly, try playing with drip campaigns. It's an incredibly powerful tool, and you can communicate things that your attendees need to know before they think about asking you. Again, making things a little easier for you as an organizer. And then the third thing I would urge you to do is understand what data you have about your attendees, about their travel patterns, about what they may need on site, and see if you can feed that back to them. So can you proactively send them an email or through the event app, tell them what hotel they're at so that they know where to find that information and so on. So really trying to over-communicate, but also automating that over-communication in a way is important. But just as a reminder, the point is not to make your attendees feel like they're being rejected or they're bothering you. The point is to make your attendees feel even more welcome, but doing less of the legwork yourself. And this is something that you can do with a ton of these tools. And the final thought that I want to leave you with is ask yourself why attendees are asking these questions and why it is important to them. And that's really the most difficult bit. I was working with my colleague Valerie on this presentation. She's 22 years old. She's amazing. I asked her, so what do you think about when you're going to a conference? And she told me, well, how do I get, to the airport? Where do I travel? And also, where do I find a safe taxi? Like, what do you mean a safe taxi? Like, aren't taxis inherently safe? And she told me, okay, clearly you've never been a 22-year-old woman and the world is very, very different. And so taking a registered taxi is something that is really important for her, which is something that has never crossed my mind because I'm in a privileged situation. And so understanding that the questions that you think are relevant to your attendees may not always produce all the questions that are important to your attendees is incredibly powerful. One tip that we discovered during this is that ChatGPT, as bad as it is for many things, it's actually really good if you lack empathy to help understand other people. So the text is really small, but I'm going to read it to you. So the prompt says, please tell me all the safety and travel concerns and inquiries a 22-year-old female traveling to a medical conference alone for the first time may have ahead of the event. The medical conference will be in Houston, Texas from April 6 to 8 at the Hilton, America's Houston, and attendees will be doctors, nurses, other primary care physicians wishing to stay up to date on the latest medical knowledge. And ChatGPT comes up with a whole lot of suggestions of what this 22-year-old woman may worry about or think about. And the way all of these AIs work right now, they're just regurgitating content that they read somewhere else based on context that you gave them. So for this exercise, they're really, really good. If you replace 22-year-old women by 65-year-old black man, it is going to give you different results. So if you look at the total composition of your audiences and you try to find a few common cohorts here, you put them into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, so what questions may this person ask about my events? I'm pretty sure the results will surprise you, and it's going to help you to really anticipate the needs of your attendees. That's a little bonus tip. In conclusion, helping to collect what questions come in and publishing them helps you to already deflect a lot of the initial inquiries. If you create templates and repeatable answers that you can just easily send out to your attendees are still going to feel taken care of, but also you can make your life easier. And when it comes to communicating and organizing the suck, over-communication is better. And the more you communicate, hopefully the less you have to communicate on a one-on-one level. These are the academic sources. I promise you, ChatGPT didn't make any of those up. I'm grateful for your time this afternoon. And if you have any questions, you can stop by. I'm not sure if there's any questions on there. If you want to ask me something, I'm going to be over there, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Torben. Do we have any questions in the audience? Yeah. A copy of the presentation. I'm sure if this lovely lady comes and speak to you, you can send the presentation.
I can scan your badge, send you the presentation. Absolutely, my pleasure.
Any other questions? Torben, thank you so much, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.